Hello, everybody, and we're here to welcome Mauricio Garcia today to the House of Sacred Scents. I'm really excited to talk to him. He is one of our new alchemists. He is the founder and perfumer for Herbcraft Perfumery. He was one of the founding members of the Ministry of Scents, and he is also a co-founder of the Coalition of Sustainable Perfumery. He is also a fantastic teacher. He teaches Intro to Aromatherapy, Intro to Perfumery, as well as Fragrant Witchcraft, which is actually how I met Mauricio, which is an amazing class, which I highly recommend you should sign up for when you get an opportunity. So we're just going to jump right in and tell us a little bit about how and why you created Herbcraft.
Well, first, thanks for having me, and thank you for your wonderful compliments. Um, Herbcraft actually started off as a skincare line, a therapeutic skincare line that was powdered masks and serums and facial steams and all kinds of things. And I mean, making has just kind of always been my thing. And I did that for a while and I really liked it. And then I stopped doing it. And I fell down the rabbit hole of natural perfumery. And so I focused on that for a while. And then I kind of started to play with the idea of resurrecting Herbcraft as a fragrance line. And so when I first started thinking about that, I pretty soon afterwards had a dream. Um, and so in this dream, you know, how you're just suddenly wherever you are. And I was in this like old house, manse or cottage or something, because I was only just in this one room that was very obviously a working space or a study. And so there were, you know, book lined walls, and there's this really cool long table that I will hopefully have someday of my, have one of my own, that was just littered with beakers and bottles and papers and books also, and just things, dry plants and bottles and things. And so these bottles suddenly started to like swirl around each other, and everything around the room started to swirl, and the like old perfume bottles that I had seen on the table started to glow, and I heard this, or I had this knowing, like in that way of dreams, right, where it's not a voice necessarily, but it is a something, whatever it is. And essentially, what this whatever it was told me was that if I put the time and the effort and the energy to devote myself to learning the secrets of perfumery, that I could also learn how to conjure and bind spirits into fragrance bottles, which is essentially what those like glowing perfumes apparently were in my dream. And so then I woke up and I was like, well, I guess that's my answer, and that's how that happened.
Here we are today.
Here we are today.
Yeah, that's a really amazing message to receive. Um,
Absolutely.
so that was an incredibly magical experience. Was there like a time before that when you started to realize that you had a personal connection to plants?
Um, I I feel like the first one that I can really remember that was just a really big moment, and this might just be because of what the plant was,
Yeah.
but I grew up here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and almost every summer of my life, with potentially 2020 being the obvious exception, I've gone camping to different places, but specifically to this one state park, a Redwood State Park, with my family. And we've gone every year. I learned how to ride my bike there. All three of my sisters also did that. And so it's
Yeah.
that kind of place. And so I remember, and I don't really know how old I was, but I remember the first memory I have of there is just looking up at this redwood tree. And there was this stillness that, as a child, that, is hurricaning around the world, in your world,
Mhm.
I hadn't felt before. I hadn't like experienced that before. And it was not coming, it was something that either stayed in me or something that was in me and was like acknowledged by that experience. But it was this resonant, just this feeling of resonance. And I mean, I feel like that's the only way that I can really describe it, because it's such an old memory.
Yeah.
But I would say that was my very first, just kind of like, oh, you're a being. And like, that was that. I mean, it's just kind of very much influenced the way I interact with the plant world.
Yeah, I was curious kind of how that has grown and changed for you over time because you kind of got this entry point and then getting from where you were there, where you had this like aha moment, now to this point where you are conjuring these spirits into perfume bottles. Like it's a pretty long journey.
Yeah. I feel like that recognition is still the same thing.
Mhm.
But the craft, I've been able to, navigate and design, my techniques for refining what that interaction looks like and what I can do with that interaction, I guess, or with that connection or resonance or understanding. Really, it is what it is. This knowing of that these are beings, these are spirits, and obviously this is not a new concept. It was probably our original spirituality, animism.
Yeah.
um, and so it's more so that I've enjoyed very much developing the techniques that I now use to create Herbcraft fragrances and do other kinds of projects.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about like animism just a little bit since you
Oh,
mentioned it? Yeah.
yeah, sure. So it I feel like it is such a like broad term that can be applied in very specific ways, but essentially it is the recognition that everything has a spirit. Whether, obviously other people have spirits, animals and plants, natural phenomena, genius loci are spirits of place. There are obviously specific parts of the world, specific parts of cities have their own spirits, mythologies, gods obviously are spirits, and spirits, they're the spirits. But it is by recognizing that the materials that we use to make fragrance or to make anything really have intelligences, have their own purposes, have their own goals that are independent from us. And being able to develop a relationship with your materials, I think, is taking that kind of a step, that knowing of them a step forward. That is fun. I feel like, I mean, this, it's really fun to be able to
Yeah.
have this intimate relationship with the things that you do to like survive in this world, right? To have a livelihood and
Absolutely. Yeah.
the chaos.
Yeah. So within that context, do you have any particular plant allies that you kind of work with on a regular basis or kind of like move through the world with you as kind of a support?
That's a good question. Um, Jasmine, specifically jasmine and polyanthum, that was my first plant memory.
Mhm.
And the magic of jasmine as a kind of spirit.
Mhm.
Obviously, the grandiflorum and sambac and polyanthum have, they're different plants, and
Mhm.
so they have their different personalities and such. But jasmine, absolutely, the way that jasmine is able to just immediately draw you into its world. You Jasmine doesn't come into your field. Jasmine, you go into Jasmine's field, or Jasmine takes over your energetic field when you use Jasmine, right? It's the
Mhm.
manifesting, boundary dissolving spirit, powerful plant. And so that I'm just like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And so Jasmine is very much, I'm very grateful to have been able to learn from that plant, and that it's such a constant, it's constant presence in my life,
Mhm.
whether I'm looking for it or not. So I love that. Redwood trees have definitely been plants that have really stuck with me as examples of what it is to be, still, and to just be absolutely what you are as the world moves around you. Rose, but I mean, who doesn't love rose?
I
Datura,
love rose.
I know, right? Who doesn't love rose and all kinds of
I'm like,
roses,
you also said
nuances,
jasmine. That's like one of mine too. I
and
was like,
every piece
yes.
of the rose, like, every
Yeah.
part of it, I love. Datura has been a plant that has showed up a lot, and I wasn't necessarily certain how to work with it until more recently, in the last couple of years, has it more clearly made itself uh, a little bit more clearly understood for me in
Yeah.
terms of how it wants to work with me, or how I can work with it. Um, Aconite is one that was a very amazing. I did like a meditation with it once and sat with it, and it was like I was like in a grave, and like in the like, like the walls around me, and like, and I could see the square of the sky, and I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And it was really intense, but it was this kind of final little key to the lock that was revealed to me by Cempasúchil, which is another flower that's a plant ally of mine that's very, very important to me. It's a Mexican marigold, and you can still see it. It's seasonal now, but you should recognize it from the altars, the Dia de los Muertos altars, the
Mhm.
Day of the Dead altars, and the ofrendas, and so it's very prevalent around Halloween and in the autumnal season. But that, which for me is this ancestral flame, and aconite was the revealing of the path for how to that connecting path essentially between like where I am as a living being and where my ancestors are as dead ones.
Mhm.
So Cempasúchil, um, I could go on forever. I'm like, I don't want to like just be like, and mugwort and wormwood, and who doesn't love mistletoe, and I got this crazy new cobra lily that I'm obsessed with, and like it's.
We can totally at some point use this as a jumping off point and have like more
Yeah, right.
conversations. I think that's important. I also like mugwort is one of my favorite things also. So I'm like, yes, we need to talk more about these things. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. So one of the things I wanted to bring up since we carry your perfume is that the choice of scent as a main road to somebody's spirituality is actually it's a very rare thing. You are one of the few people who I found who is actually doing this type of work. At least within this area, which is why I was so excited to go to Fragrant Witchcraft. I was like, oh my God, I finally found someone who's like working with this stuff with scent specifically because there are a lot of people who work with like plant allies, but it isn't necessarily like through the use and combination of scent. So I was curious in terms of what specifically drew you to scent as a way of connecting to the spirit realm.
Well, I would say that the what was when I was introduced to perfumery, natural perfumery, by my dear friend Ella Gluckman, who's a student of Mandy Aftel's, who you're familiar with, and everyone should be familiar with. She's an amazing, amazing perfumer in person, and pioneer in fragrance, especially natural fragrance. And so she was like, "These are my essences," and she had all of these oils, and I was familiar with essential oils from working in skincare and doing all of that,
Mhm.
and so their therapeutic properties, and I had my oils and I loved them, and I blended to make like fragrances, but
Yeah,
not in a structured way. It was just kind of
you're
how they
playing.
smelled to me.
Yeah.
And so I would when I read Mandy's books and started looking at these fragrance materials, essential oils, as building blocks of a composite part in this more sophisticated way. I was like, like this is like I do spell work with dry plants or fresh ones or whatever, and with oils individually, and it's like this is like just a like spell, like
Mhm.
you know this specific designing of a whatever this physical object with these ingredients, and I know these ingredients, I don't necessarily like to call them that, but these materials, these plants have their own spirits and energies, and I know how to work with them in that way, and it's like, why can't I make a perfume that is also
Mhm.
so and so that was kind of that first like key to that dream, right? The like dream that I had, and I was like, well, you'll learn how, and it's like, well, why can't I?
Mhm.
And actually, interestingly enough, I've since learned that perfumery is a path on the occult, on the path of occult herbalism. It has been, if we think of fragrance, the origin of fragrance, I mean, I don't want to like bash commercial fragrances. There are many commercial fragrances that I really love, but in a way, what we do with fragrance is connect people to the spirit world. And even if the only people that we're connecting is ourselves,
Mhm.
we connect people to the spirit world. And that was what fragrance was for before it was this, capitalistic commercial industry.
Yeah.
And so that was an exciting thought that I was kind of like, oh, like not so much uncovering a like forgotten path, but partly like forging my own version of it really is what it came down to. And so what I love about fragrance as a magical path is that we work with these infinitesimally tiny, tiny, tiny molecules. You know, we work with these building blocks of things. And I think that's pretty amazing that those things, those ingredients, those molecules can teach us either directly in the sense of like what we feel when we're blending with them or what we learn about them or what their relevance is culturally, or how when they occur in natural substances like essential oils and absolutes. And we string them together, and sometimes they're like, that's not what I want to do, or that doesn't work, and you're like, oh well, that doesn't work, but you keep at it until you figure out how it works. And I think that's pretty amazing to work, to be able to work spiritually at a molecular level. I don't know, I think that's kind of cool, and for me that's very exciting. I get very excited when I think about just how, I mean, you know, cross my fingers that that's the case, but how many decades I have of just making things, like what am I going to make?
Yeah. The sky's the limit at this point. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, having kind of talked about that a little bit, like, and the way that you got into it and like what your path was, if somebody was interested in exploring plants and scent in this way, like, how would you recommend that they go about that?
I would say that I think the key to any esoteric, occult, spiritual, magical work is intuition. So, you know, really learning how to trust yourself and whatever kind of like shadow work or psychological work that might require. And I think that, you know, the more the more you're able to like be comfortable with yourself and listen to yourself and know when what you're absorbing or what you're intuiting is correct, the more easily you can move through this kind of world, right? Because these plants aren't, they'll visit us in dreams, they'll often manifest themselves in different ways. um, some plant substances help with that more than others in different ways, but you know, really it's a lot about trusting what you're absorbed or what you're being told or what you're intuiting or what you're, you know, hearing or seeing, however it is that you perceive these, you know, these forces or these energies. So in that is like key. I think that's key to anything, because once you figure out how to like listen to yourself, you can figure out how to listen to other things. So that for sure is key. And getting to know plants, especially fragrant ones, they're everywhere. You know, almost obviously anything that you find, even just at a local supermarket or your farmer's market, you pinch some leaves and you're going to get scents, and you can, what does that make you feel? I think it's almost more exciting to learn from the plants without all of our, you know, all of the perfumery and herbalism. And I think it's really cool to see what you learn first from these plants and then go and read and research and absolutely have conversations with people. But I think getting to know the plants directly is what is the most useful, and then you have a better idea of how to work with, you know, these more impersonal substances, right? We're not necessarily distilling the roses, however much I would love to. We're not cold pressing the oranges, but we can, you know, hang out with an orange tree if we can find one somewhere, because they're usually, especially in California, more common than people might think.
Yeah.
It's either
I have a lot of lemons. Lemons are pretty easy.
lemons. I love
Yeah.
lemon blossoms. Oh my
Oh
god.
my God, they're amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
I want some of that.
You know, and it's like, what is the tree telling you? What are you learning? And then obviously a lot of reading. Maybe this is what we will do. We
Okay.
will create a bibliography rather than me just trying to like pull
Yeah,
names.
perfect. I'll post it with the
Yeah,
video and people
we'll do
can
that.
reference it. So then we
Yes.
can put Mandy's books on there too,
Oh,
which are already
absolutely.
more
Yes.
playful. Yeah.
So read those books. There's we'll both put our favorite books on there. Books that I can look at the spines of right now.
Yeah. I like have one
So
next to me. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah.
So, you know, a lot of reading, a lot of, but trusting yourself and trusting what the plants are telling you. And, oh, and respect, being obviously very respectful of these plant spirits and also the cultures from which, you know, we might be drawing some of the more traditional or cultural or mythological information about them.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to get the bibliography on here and we can
No, right?
share some things with some people. Um,
Nice.
so I'm gonna like steer us in a little bit of a different direction. And I wasn't sure exactly how you wanted to share the perfumes that we're going to be
Oh,
carrying.
yeah. I could
We
say
do have Flora, but I was curious to have you talk about your process that you use to create a perfume, and then you can pick one or all and just like talk about them. Tell us about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the way that I create fragrance now is that I'll usually have, and this is for Herbcraft or for my own work. Obviously, if it's a client, they are already coming to me with ideas or with what they want. But for myself, it's usually an idea that I sit on for a long time. Like my newest fragrance, Ofrenda, which you might, is it backwards on there? Maybe it's
No, it's not.
backwards.
I don't think so.
I'll hold it far enough away that you can't tell.
Yeah.
And sorry if the bottles are, these are like my bottles that I do use in work and to anoint things in my hands and stuff. But Ofrenda was a fragrance that I had wanted to do um, based on the Dia de los Muertos, because beyond it being a very important time of the year for me and my family and my ancestors. I just love everything about that time of year, but also the ofrendas, the altars, the all the things that we put on it, the chocolate and corn and all of the flowers and tequila and all of our ancestors' favorite things. And even if they are like Oreos and Coca-Cola and Marlboro cigarettes, my grandpa gets his juicy fruit gum and all those things.
I was supposed to
Uh,
get Parliaments this year. I don't smoke. I was like, I don't want to buy tobacco.
like, oh, but I guess that's what you want. Um, and so I wanted to incorporate all of those elements into a fragrance while also working with, because flowers, I love flowers, working with flowers that were part of the Mesoamerican traditions, from which the Dia de los Muertos and all of that we know about how to navigate guiding our dead home during that time of year, where all that comes from. Um, and so I wanted to work with Omisochil, which is Mexican tuberose, Cempasúchil, which is Mexican marigold, and Cocalosochil, which is red frangipani. And so I already loved the ingredients, those as absolutes or essential oils. So I already loved them as materials, and I work with them in other fragrances and other mediums, but I wanted to use these flowers that were such important parts of the spiritual traditions from which this other tradition comes, but I wanted to ground them in the ofrendas, the offerings. And it was received really well, and people seem to really love it. It's a very, I'll tell you guys what the notes are. It opens up with a sparkling little bergamot, just a touch of lime and mezcal. It's a sustainably grown mezcal that I use. I guess you could drink this because it's not denatured, but don't. It's not going to taste very good. And the heart are those flowers, the red frangipani, the tuberose, the cempasúchil, and it's on a base of vanilla and really delicious chocolate. I use traditional Mexican spices, as well as a corn silk note that I am obsessed with. And it's just this very cozy, comforting scent that people always love different aspects of it, but it ended up being a gourmand. I wasn't necessarily sure whether it was going to end up more floral or more gourmand, but it decided that it wanted to be gourmand, and I feel like that's appropriate. And
Yeah.
so my process is this ideation, which plants, and then just like however many dozens or sometimes a couple hundred trials, until just working on pieces of a fragrance and tiny adjustments until you get till it's like I'm done.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Um,
Alfredo. It's
but like,
definitely yeah, the chocolate comes out a lot for me in that. Like it wasn't something, I'm not a huge gourmand person generally. Like I was originally attracted to
neither
it
am I.
because I love flowers so
Yeah.
much. And then but that like drew me in. And I was like, I don't know, I love this part of like this perfume. This is amazing. Um so you mentioned the sustainability of the mezcal. So we're going to use that to kind of move into, you are a co-founder of this USP with me. And I know from talking to you previously and just your participation in that group that sustainability and the influence of your work on the plants that you use, as well as the earth as a whole, is extremely important to you. And I wanted you to speak to that a little bit and tell us what sustainability specifically means to you, because I know it means different things to different people. And also, how does that show up in your business and your creative practices for Herbcraft?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like um, my what sustainability means to me is more of like a vision. Um, I see, I mean, obviously, I mean, we know we have the potential to do this, right? It's just as a
Mhm.
matter of will and organization and convincing people that they also want to do it. But this non-extractive way of existing on the planet where we don't plow down rainforests to grow vanilla, which is another endangered species, you know, destroying a rainforest to grow an endangered species that needs to be conserved anyway. Like, it's this whole, this,
Yeah.
how tangled everything is, while loving and really truly, I mean, I do this because I love plants. That's, they, they speak to me. I have learned so much from them, and they are, what I want to do is make, I don't necessarily want to have a business. I don't want to do all these things, but it's a part of it. But I want to be able to make things, but I can't in good conscience make something in a way that's just like, whatever, I'm just ordering a couple grams of that, or oh, whatever, I'm just ordering this, or that's not how this works, right? Because we all do that, and every single person doing that is why, you know
It's
a
problems.
person.
Yeah.
But obviously there's big, this is not an individual responsibility situation. It's very much, big corporations that are mostly doing this, but also really, really old traditions. I mean, we learned the other day that frankincense, how many tons was it? 50 tons a year?
50? Yeah.
50 tons of
I
frankincense
thought it was at Christmas, like
at Christmas
specifically.
by
Yeah.
the Catholic Church. So the 50 tons, the Catholic Church goes through 50 tons of frankincense on Christmas, an endangered species that we have yet to confirm whether it's going to be 20 years or it's going to be 40 years or 50 years that it goes extinct, but it is shouldn't go extinct at all. So either way, it's too soon, or not, shouldn't happen at all. Um, and the people who depend on the harvesting of the frankincense and the funds that come in from frankincense are, they're still impoverished. There's still, there's still a lot of issues, human rights issues that are going on with them, that they don't have the resources that they need, and they should, if the Catholic Church is consuming that much frankincense in a year or in a holiday, like,
Yeah.
like, why does it have to work that way? And so for me, it's always like, for me, I don't want to participate in that industry in the same way.
Mhm.
And what that looks like for me was, deciding that my brand was not going to be exclusively all natural, just because there were, I don't want to use animal ingredients in my fragrances. And I have currently chosen to not utilize endangered species in my fragrances. So anything that has been categorized as, obviously, I'm not going to use something like extinct, but extinct, threatened, near threatened, or endangered, or critically endangered by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Red List.
Mhm.
So I don't use any of those. And I'm not going to until we can find
Yes.
uh, resource or sources for these ingredients that are ethical, where the people who harvest and grow everything and distill everything are happy. The plants are grown renewably. I mean, that's like key, right? Renewability, but it is hard when things aren't even sustainable yet. So how can we be renewable when the world
Yeah.
isn't sustainable? um, like uh, the oh my goodness, and it fell out of my head. Uh, Fair Source Botanicals.
Yes, I was about to say
Check
we
out
should
Fair
plug
Source
that. Yeah.
Botanicals. So we were introduced to Stephen, who is an activist and conservationist that is working on frankincense and other species. And that is an amazing. We can support people that are growing renewably and sustainably, and not necessarily have to worry about you know con- consuming in a way that's not sustainable or renewable. But um, the reason that I try to make Herbcraft as sustainable as possible, and the reason that we co-founded the COSP is that it has to be like that everywhere, all over.
Mhm.
It's not sustainable for plants, and it's not sustainable for people for us to continue to run the industry in this extractive way. And I mean, you know this, but I'm talking to you guys.
But yeah,
Uh,
you want to share with everybody.
Demand from your brands that they be renewable and sustainable. And I mean, you guys are the key. We make because we love to make, and we don't have a choice. It's just that's what we are.
Mhm.
But we do our best to create our own standards, and we need to hold ourselves to even higher standards than that, and we need to hold everyone else to those standards as well. um, but I'm sorry, that was a really like kind of
No,
windy
I thought it was
answer to
great.
your
I
question.
really appreciate it.
But
You covered
yeah.
a lot of bases. I'm glad you worked in Fair/Slash Botanicals in there because
Yes,
it was
they're
like,
amazing, they're amazing,
yeah,
amazing, amazing.
they are. And it's so beautiful to be able to like now give a solution.
Yeah,
Like
right.
you can go to this place.
I
Like
and that
before
was
it was like it's endangered. We don't know what to do. There's a lot of
yeah.
confusion around this. And now
Mhm.
we have like some clarity. We've been able to learn from people. Like we actually can refer people to resources that will allow them to behave in a more sustainable way,
Yes,
which is
exactly.
really exciting. And I use frankincense in like a number of my products. So that was exciting for me because I was like, do I need to reformulate or just like get rid of these things? Like what do I need to do? So yeah, it was really good. You can change these things. That's what's really beautiful about this. Is
Exactly,
like
yeah, yeah.
we're not
And
stuck on a track to extinction. Like this can
no,
be
we don't have to
changed.
be, we really don't have to be. And
Yeah.
I mean, we can dream all these things, and we're entirely capable of accomplishing and realizing all these dreams of sustainability and a just world. Like, it's not just about preserving these plants, it's very much about environmental justice, and how that uh, in disproportionately impacts Black, Indigenous, and other POC communities, and how colonialism in the fragrance industry has shaped what a lot of these people can even do. And you grow up and your parents are vetiver farmers, and what else are you going to do if there are no other resources available for you? And that's not to say that that's the reality everywhere, and I know a lot of fragrance houses are working to change that, but that was the reality. Colonialism, it's not like they went and colonized these places and were like, how are we going to make their lives better? Like, that's not what it was. That's
It was
not at
extractive.
all.
Yeah.
um
That's that
yeah.
was the plan.
Yeah, that was not the plan.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk a little bit about. I would love for you to talk about the Red List because I know you
Yeah.
just did a project with them, just to
Yes,
like give them a little bit of play. Yeah.
they are another very wonderful group. So the Red List Project is a essentially a group of conservationists that are uh, partnering with beauty companies to uh, really fund to create solutions to their fundraising issues, right? So like, I love an adorable little seal as much as anybody, and a little polar bear, and people love animals. They love animals, as they should, and they should donate to all of these conservation efforts. But people are not as fond of plants, unfortunately, and I mean, once they're gone, we're gone. I mean, everything's gone once plants are gone. And so it takes a little more creativity to get people to donate to plant conservation efforts. And that's where I came in. So for them, I created this kind of proof of concept that we can take the volatile organic compound profiles of endangered species. Um, I did for one of the species that I did for them was the Cymbidium sinense, which is a really beautiful black orchid that has this gorgeous violet scent. And so I took the profile that this assessment of the molecules that this flower emits, and then I recreated the scent. And this is something obviously that perfumers, excuse me, have done for as long as we've had the GCMS technology. Well, maybe not that long, but whatever, that's what was used to do that. And that's how we know, that's why we know how to recreate the scent of a rose and a jasmine, and these analyses. But we can recreate the scents of these endangered species and use them in product, or have sell them on their own, so that we can fundraise for the Red List project, or for the Red List specifically in their conservation efforts. So really what the project is about is these beauty partnerships to raise funds for conservation efforts.
Awesome. Yeah.
I could have just said
So
that in one sentence, but I didn't.
there was some description. It was important. I got to try these out. I contacted them. You can too. You can
Yes.
connect with them on Instagram. Just look up the Red List Project. You can find them online, donate to them. You can actually request these scents. It's really amazing. I sent them a DM and gave them my address and they sent them to me. I was really surprised how easy that was, but it was really amazing. And I would encourage everybody to inform themselves more and to donate if they can.
Yes,
Um,
please.
yeah. So, and you have one more project. You have like 1,000 projects, but we have one more thing that I wanted to address. That's like a separate organization that you're now participating in that I thought would be good if you could share a little bit more about. And I think that was Future Olfactives.
Yes. So Future Olfactives is very new. I'm not part of the founding team, but the two of the founders are pretty well known perfumers. One is Dana El Masri of Jasmine Sarai Perfumes. She's wonderful, wonderful. Definitely check out her and her brand, and her work. And she's founded it with other perfumers, including Yosh Han, who was one of the pioneers for American indie perfumery. She's amazing, and so the purpose of this collective is to really uplift essentially underrepresented Black, Indigenous, and POC members of the fragrance community, and that's what it comes down to. Is really it's that kind of partly that saying of if there's no seat for you at the table, then you make your own table. And that's kind of what this is. They have their website is futureolfactives.org. I definitely recommend signing up. There will be resources made available, including like a Rolodex of perfumers that have voluntarily submitted their information, including demographic information for some of them. If maybe there's a brand that wants to create a specifically themed fragrance, and they can do what they've always done and just have someone who's not from that place or from that culture make the fragrance according to these fantasies or these ideas, or you can ask and pay for someone that's from there to do it, and that's pretty cool, I think. And also these redefining of some of these more problematic aspects of fragrance, including the colonialism that we talked about and that we're trying to navigate in the COSP, which is what my involvement is we're going to definitely be doing some collaborations in terms of uplifting the voices of the people that create the fragrance products that we use. We talk about them and we their pictures on a website and look at them harvesting vanilla, and it's like, but we want to hear from them. We want to uplift their voices and talk to us about what, if they're happy, wonderful, but if you're not, why not, and what do you need to change in order for you to be happy? And so yes, that's what that is, and that's kind of more of what my involvement in that will be. I think those connections, and ideally more of that storytelling.
Yeah. No, I'm
A lot
excited
of
for the
growth.
collaboration potentially for COSP. That would be amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can wrap it up here. Oh, we're going to talk a little bit about the elemental blends.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was really fun. That was so. My sense of time is almost non-existent. Was that 3 years ago or 4 or 2? Not 2.
Two? I think it was two.
Was it? Okay, 2 years ago, at the
Yeah.
Modern Witches
So
Conference.
the presentation I saw, no, it was a year and a half or something.
Was
When
it
you
that?
talked about, you specifically, I think you had mentioned that before, but at not the, which is, I always say the wrong thing, the convergence, I think Scarlet Sage
Modern
was
Witches
on.
Confluence.
Yeah, not this confluence, but the one before.
Mhm.
You
Okay.
talked about fragrant witchcraft and you brought all of your samples of your elementals. It
Yes.
was beautiful.
So
Yeah.
I had made some. So the theme of the confluence was the elements, I think, or elementalism. And so I created a few blends that were elemental. I had an earth blend that uh, was based on vetiver and patchouli, but also had the geosmin molecule, which is what that scent of petrichor is right after it rains, among other materials. And so I wanted to create a structure, like a magical structure, which is essentially what my fragrances are, that could be used for earth elemental work, whether that was grounding or a foundation for protective work or fertility work or prosperity or drawing or whatever, how, or maybe more solidifying of boundaries or solidifying of space. And then I had air and water. I had a Pacifica blend. I had fog. Fog is an accord that I've actually had for quite some time. It is in Memoria. I made it for Memoria, which is my Camping in the Redwoods fragrance. So I had that available, and you attended that confluence, and I talked at you because I do sometimes get like a little nervous in groups. So I just talked at you. I was like, I'm just gonna look at Molly. um, and so they were a limited one-time thing that I did for the confluence, but we have decided that the House of Sacred Scents will be carrying anointing bottles of them. And so those will be exclusive. Those are going to be really exciting. They can be used similarly to the Herbcraft fragrances, where you can use them to anoint your hands for specific kinds of work, or candles, or they can be used as offerings, or to, consecrate objects. Just depends on the kind of work you're doing and which blend you're working with.
Yeah. I'm excited for that to happen. We can have another little talk about
Yes,
potential applications. You went through like quite a few actually with like potentials for like the earth element. So
mhm.
that was really cool. We can do a little bit
We
on
can
that.
definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay, so we are also planning on having an IG live. We're gonna schedule that probably in December. Is that our plan?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that'll be
So
fun.
we'll probably plan that for December. You can always drop any questions you have in the comments. You can DM me questions for Mauricio. Follow him at Herbcraft on Instagram. Check out his website. He is teaching courses. Also, there's a calendar, I believe, on his website. You can always stay up to date on that. Um, he will also announce them on Instagram. I also promote them sometimes too. So you'll be updated on that from me also.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Uh, but yeah, do you have anything you want to close with?
I keep telling people that everything's really insane and everything's really crazy, but like all we can do is what we can do, right? Obviously, do everything that we can do. But there are some certain things that, only Molly can do, and only I can do, and only you can do. And I think that if those things help you and people and the world be better, then you should do them. And that's what I'll say.
Thank you so much, Mauricio.
Yeah,
I
thank
am
you.
very excited to be having Herbcraft in the House of Sacred Scents and looking forward to more conversations.
Yes, so am I. Thank you.
Thank you.